I'm editing this video, it occurs to me that I hauled 18 books in the month of May, and I didn't read a single one of them. Good morning, readers. Welcome back to my channel, Books, Ink, and Paper. I have a May wrap-up for you today, a little later than I'd like to be in getting this done, and a little fewer books read in May than I would have liked to have read. So let's get on it. So in the month of May, I only read 4 books. I did begin to read 2 others for the nonfiction, true crime readathon. They were nonfiction. I started to read Columbine, and I'm about 100 pages in. I need to see if I can renew it because I kind of put it aside for a bit. And The Devil in the White City, and I'm about halfway through that. But I did finish 4 books that I did enjoy. So the first book that I think I read in order was The 7 Husbands of Evelyn Hugo. This book author is Taylor Jenkins Reid, and this was a first for this author for me. I've had a lot of new authors to me this year so far, and I did enjoy this book a lot. The challenge that I had with it is only that I felt like one of the characters could have been more fully developed, but that may have been a purposeful choice on the part of the author. So the premise of this book is that it's about a woman who was a very famous Hollywood glamour girl, movie star, who came up from a young age and was discovered in very deliberate ways. She really put herself out there, and she made choices all along the way to advance her career. She was aging at the beginning of this book, so it does flash back to go through each one of her husbands separately. But initially, at the start of the book, she is giving some dresses away to charity to raise money for breast cancer research. Her daughter died of breast cancer, and she hires a particular reporter, or requests a particular reporter, Monique, to do an article for her magazine on this particular donation. But when Monique arrives, she discovers that Evelyn really wants her to write her biography, to make a ton of money on it. She wants her to be free to sell it to the highest bidder, and she wants to tell her about all of the choices that she made in her life, for which she has no regrets. Marrying 7 people is certainly a robust way to live, but you'll find, if you choose to read it, or if you have read it, you found that they were all very, they all served a very unique and purposeful place in her life. I don't want to give too much away. What I really would have liked more was a bit more development of the character Monique. There was a little bit, but it was very surface level. It wasn't very deep. I felt like Monique could have used a little bit more finessing. In my mind, I would have liked to have just gotten a little bit more meat on her. She felt like a somewhat weak character to me, and Evelyn was very, very strong. Again, maybe that was purposeful to show the dichotomy between the two. I've talked to other people who read it recently around the same time I did, and we sometimes agree and we sometimes don't. Nevertheless, I did enjoy it a lot, and I gave it 4 stars. I then read, and I'm not sure these are in particular order, but I read No Exit by Taylor Adams. And this was interesting because I read it in a really, as we were moving into the hot days of summer, but I actually requested it from my library months ago. Finally, it came for me. This is a thriller set in the winter in a snowstorm in Colorado, if I recall. But No Exit follows the story of a girl who is traveling to be with her mom, who has pancreatic cancer and is having surgery and is very, very ill. And she's somewhat estranged from her mom, and so she has all this angst about their relationship and about the fact that her mom is now dying. And she realizes she's in the middle of a snowstorm, can't get past where she is really safely. There are warnings and all kinds of things, and her car starts to act like it's not going to make it. I think she's almost out of gas, so she pulls over at a rest area where there are 4 other people. And the story is it goes on to she discovers some things about some of the other people in the rest area. It's very suspenseful, very fast-paced, and I enjoyed it a lot. I did have a little trouble, and I heard somebody else on BookTube talk about this. I did have a little trouble understanding the logistics of where she was and the building and what was happening and where they were going. And I had a little trouble with the place piece of the story, but I did find it to be very interesting, and it did catch my interest. I think I read it in a couple of days, and then I lent it to my daughter before it was due back, and I think she read it in a couple of days too. I really recommend it. It might be a good read in the summer when it's really hot, because maybe it'll make you feel really cold. I did turn the air conditioning down and bundle up in a blanket and had a little hot tea, and really just dug in. I gave it 4 stars. When I went to the library to pick up No Exit, there was a book right there at the front that I have heard a lot about from other booktubers, and so I picked it up to read it, and it was a first time for this author as well. It was a first time for Taylor Adams too. I never read any of his books, and I don't know if he's written anything else. But back to this third book that I read, it was All Your Perfects by Colleen Hoover. I tried a Colleen Hoover once before. I think it was November 11th or November 8th. Something like that. But I couldn't get into it. It wasn't my thing. And so I put it right back down, and I didn't buy it. I got it from the library as well. But I heard a lot of people said this one was good, and it intrigued me. And so I picked it up. Some of her books, and a lot of them are really heavy on romance. And I read a little romance here and there, but not a ton. But lately, I guess I've read a lot more. So I liked All Your Perfects. If you have a trigger around infertility, I would suggest you take caution in reading this book. It can be very difficult to read. It follows this couple, and it's a dual timeline, so it goes back from when they first met to where they are now, and it goes back and forth a lot. It's easy though to follow. I don't mind those at all, and it's a nice development of the people and their situations and their relationship and the challenges that marriages face along the way, especially with hard-hitting topics like having children. I gave it 4 stars. Will I read more Colleen Hoover? I'm not sure. I might. There is one that she wrote, I think it's called Verity, and I think it is a different take on some of the books that she's written. So I may give it a shot. I don't know that I'll go back to the one that I didn't finish, but maybe look at some that other people have recommended. I do have one on my Kindle that I've got a while ago. My daughter-in-law recommended her as an author, and so I could read that one pretty easily. And the last book I read was 9 Perfect Strangers by Liane Moriarty. I have read almost everything that Liane Moriarty has written. I have enjoyed almost everything that Liane Moriarty has written. I did enjoy parts of this book, but it was rough for me, and it is rated lower than some of her other books. I think it's around an average of 3.5 stars. I gave it 3. Or the plot of this book was jagged for me. Yeah, but it follows 9 people who end up entering a health spa for wellness and restoration, and it's a retreat experience, and they paid a lot of money for it, and so they're all pretty well to do, and it does develop their characters fairly well. That may have been part of the problem, is I didn't like a lot of them. And I think you were not supposed to necessarily like them, and you were supposed to find that they redeemed themselves or that they improved as a result of the retreat. But the retreat piece itself, it had a very bizarre plot. And that's all I'm going to say. It had a really bizarre plot to me, and it was almost, at times, it felt almost comical in its bizarreness. It was pretty far-fetched, let's just say that. And I've seen some reviews and they aren't great, and there's a lot of comments on Goodreads about this particular book of hers. And so yeah, I would say that there's some rough edges for a lot of people, but I did my best. I finished. I didn't know that I would for a while. I've talked to other friends who said, one of my friends said the whole thing disturbed her. And there was a bit of disruption internally for me too. It was just definitely not what I've become accustomed to with Leanne Moriarty. So again, I gave it 3 stars. So at the end of the day, with those 4 books, I read 1,425 pages. If I add the other pages that I read that I didn't finish, I was up to 1,703. So it was a pretty good month considering. I just really felt like I was going to I just felt like I was going to read more and I didn't. So June is already becoming a little more promising. I'm reading something now that I'm really into, and I have some summer reading plans, and I'm really just kind of cementing some of those things. So I'll have a book up, I'll have a video up of my June TBR very soon. But until then, if you've read these books, please let me know in the comments below, or if you plan to read them, let me know that as well. No Exit was highly recommended by some friends here locally, as well as some people that I follow on BookTube, and I really appreciate that recommendation, as well as the Evelyn. I'm reading a book now with a character named Eleanor, so I'm really struggling with the Evelyn Eleanor issue here. The Seven Husbands of Evelyn. Oh my God. The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo was highly recommended too, and I'm glad that I picked it up, as well as giving Colleen Hoover a solid try. Like this video if you appreciated it, share it with friends if you would, and make sure that you've subscribed and clicked on the bell above so that you get a notification every time there is a new video. And as always, I hope you have a very happy reading day. Bye.